Finally, Riot is actually delivering on the promise of bringing exclusive champions to Wild Rift. And it all started with Nora, the Yordle who owns the Book of Thresholds along with Yuumi. Riot even released an introduction trailer for her, where you can see more of her interactions with other champions. Now, this upcoming exclusive release of Nora is pretty interesting. She was actually the first champion exclusive to Legends of Runeterra, the 5th exclusive for Teamfight Tactics, and she even served as the shopkeeper on the Brawl map. So yeah, popularity is definitely not an issue for her, which is probably why Riot chose her to debut the idea of exclusive champions for Wild Rift, a feature fans have been asking for a while. Even though her release got delayed due to bugs, believe me, Nora is the first of many to come. So let's check out some of the other popular champions who will eventually make their way to Wild Rift 2. Karina Varaza, the Mastermind. This one's pretty famous and has popped up in a bunch of places. For those who don't know, Karina Varaza is an influential Chem Baron in Zaun, collecting deadly ingredients for her chemical arsenal from the rare plants she grows. Countless experiments with different samples have left her with some scars, which she skillfully hides with fashionable accessories. On top of that, she's a meticulous craftswoman, with big ambitions for Zaun's future, aiming to become the envy of Piltover's ruling clans and even the other Chem Barons constantly at war with each other. Her current masterpiece is the very rare flower called Magnum Opus, which can feed off Zaun's volatile chemical compounds. Just a side note here, remember that other timeline Echo ended up in? There, Milo and Clagger are developing a hybrid plant that can absorb polluting gases and convert them into oxygen, or something like that. He mentions that the process is slow, but making progress with some new challenges. You can even see a little plant in a glass container. That might have been a small nod to Karina. And by the way, Karina was technically already a character in League, but she really took shape thanks to Legends of Runeterra a few years later. I say this because of Caitlyn's biography. Not the retcon from Arcane, but the second to last version still on the official site, which says her parents were actually kidnapped and tortured to force them to give certain information to a group of kidnappers. Caitlyn, with her detective skills, managed to find and save her parents. When she questions the men who kidnapped them, they say they don't know who hired them, only that there was an intermediary whose name started with the letter C. This totally obsesses Caitlyn, and she becomes fixated on figuring out who this mysterious C name really is. At one point, people actually believed it was Camille. Riot even fueled the speculation a bit because of some interactions Swain has.
My, does your dear grandniece know what C has been up to?
And yeah, for a while, it might have seemed like it was really Camille, but eventually, they decided to change it. The narrative team figured it would be better to take that mysterious figure and turn them into a completely new character, something built from scratch, rather than assigning it to Camille, who was already in the game. That's how Karina was born. And don't think she's a lightweight. Besides being incredibly brilliant, Karina actually managed to outsmart Caitlyn, sneaking into Piltover's own Enforcers department. She helped Caitlyn deal with all sorts of enemies and obstacles on her path, making Caitlyn unknowingly clear the way in Karina's favor. And here's the kicker. Karina even spread false leads, but they were super convincing. As you can see in the image on the left, Caitlyn is holding a meeting with this whole department, discussing how they were finally going to catch C. Meanwhile, Karina is watching everything unfold exactly the way she wants. And as shown in the image on the right, Caitlyn prepared herself carefully and headed into the trap inside a hideout or greenhouse, only to be completely shocked by what she found. When they reach the setup location, Karina even smiles, clearly enjoying herself as the officers break down the door, trying to catch Piltover's most wanted criminal. But they make the same mistake as Camille's squad made in the Awaken animation. Just like they walked into Jin's trap, Caitlyn and her team step on a bunch of flowers, which started releasing huge clouds of toxic pollen. And why did Karina do all of this? Simple. Caitlyn and the others were exactly where she wanted them, and now she was about to take them all out at once, killing several birds with one stone. Now, I know some of you at home are probably thinking, yeah, she might have lore and be super cool, but what makes you think that they're actually going to put her in Wild Rift? And my answer? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and maybe consider becoming a member so you'll get access to all sorts of perks, like early access to videos and even voting on future video topics. But back to the point. What really makes Karina's Wild Rift release even more plausible is just how popular she's become. She was even given a skin in the Spirit Blossom event, officially dubbed the Spirit of the Flower, appearing as the design on the back of the cards, with an emoji and even promotional concept art for Spirit Blossom in Legends of Runeterra. And here's the thing, she was so well received that Riot gave her another line of skins, this time in Battle Academia. In that line, Karina is in the same school as Caitlyn, and in the same club, and I'd even say in the same class. Judging by her expression, she's definitely not a fan of wealthy Caitlyn. If you look at the context, they're on a podium and Karina clearly didn't like coming in second, right below Caitlyn, all because of that 40-point difference, as you can see on the scoreboard in the top right corner. In the second image, Caitlyn looks like the type of student with no friends. Nobody likes her in the skin because she's the classic rich, spoiled, privileged, narcissistic, anime student. Karina might have been subtly throwing shade at her for that, or maybe for something else entirely. Now, as for Karina's role in lane, if she comes to Wild Rift, I'd say she'd probably be some kind of mage, obviously with a plant-based theme in her kit. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she had an ability that mixes Teemo's ultimate, yeah, the mushroom thing, with Zyra's passive that makes sprouts appear. And based on her lore, Karina's plants are highly flammable, so you can bet she'd be the kind of champion that deals serious DPS, either through burning or poisoning, maybe even combining both debuffs into a single ability, or splitting them across her kit. And trust me, that's super annoying to play against. No wonder Teemo is such a hated demon in the community. Oh, by the way, there's an artist named Daniel Matos who actually drew what Karina could look like in-game. Check this out, it's pretty awesome. Zolani and Jorani, the Darkin supports. Yeah, this isn't a rumor, it's actually a fact. Originally, Zahin was being developed as a support, and he even had a kit and narrative built around that idea. It's no coincidence that Yunara is an ADC and Zahin was basically meant to be your support in the War from the lore. There's also the fact that we've been without a support champion for a while. The last one was Milio on March 23rd, 2023. And if you count a more tanky champion, it was Rel back in the end of 2020. Plus, we already had a champion for every lane in League except support. So yeah, there were a lot of arguments in favor of Zahin being a support, but the team felt like this wasn't the vibe or fantasy they wanted for the character, so they dropped the support idea and moved him to top lane instead. The rioters involved actually did a Reddit post where they answered questions from players about Zahin, covering both narrative and gameplay, and one rioter in particular shared some really interesting insights. Blake Squad 5 Smith, lead champion designer at Riot, was asked what it would have been like if Zahin stayed as a support. He said he wanted to emphasize Zahin fighting closer to his allies and giving them some kind of buff due to that proximity. His damage would have probably been more bursty, and he would have had stronger defenses, but only for a limited time. The end goal was to create some kind of support vanguard fighter to take down enemies, similar to how Pyke is the kind of assassin variant of that idea. Now, about that buff idea, Zahin would corrupt his allies with hemomancy, turning them into a Darkin or something like that, giving them effects based on the allies he fought alongside the most during the match. Squad 5 also mentioned that he didn't want to reveal too much about those mechanics, since he already thinks those ideas could work at some point. But here's the best part, check this out. They asked him if it would have been possible in the near future to release a Darkin support, so you could have a Darkin in every lane, each functional and lane specific, not just a random one filling the support role. So the setup would be Aatrox top, Rost, the Red Kayn in jungle, Naafiri mid, Varus ADC, and Zahin filling the support slot. But since Zahin broke the cycle, we were hoping to see more of this composition. In lore, there were always been 5 main Darkin, and once all 5 were released, there wouldn't be any others as champions. But Squad 5's response was positive, saying that a Darkin support is still a possibility, and it might not even be that far in the future. So basically, we're getting more Darkin champions, and the next one will probably be a support. And here's Riot's genius move. They noticed that among the Darkin shown in Legends of Runeterra, 2 of them got a lot of popularity and are frequently mentioned by the community. So one of those 2 is likely the one Riot will pick to release in Wild Rift as an exclusive champion. The first option is Zolani. This character is insanely popular and requested as a champion a lot, and she's had a huge campaign dedicated to her over the years that's still going strong today. To give you an idea, she was first mentioned on February 8th, 2020, in the short story Poetry with a Blade, during a conversation between Master Doran and Master Yi in his youth. And get this, they were both near Zolani's ceiling site, Mistfall. After that, she was mentioned again in another short story called The Faceless God, which featured a large monument of hers that had its face ripped off by a deep strike. Later, we actually found out that the one responsible of this act of vandalism was Aatrox. We can even see the statue of Zolani more clearly in the cinematic The Call, when Talia and Kaisa arrive at the site, only to find the area completely destroyed, no survivors, and now overrun by the Void. During the fight that follows, Talia even manages to detach the statue from the cliff where it was carved and hurl it into a massive crater to crush several Xershai spawn. Zolani's first official appearance was in the World Walker expansion of Legends of Runeterra, where we can see her through one of Bard's portals in her level 1 splash art. And for those of you who don't know, Zolani was wielded by a student of Master Yi, named June, who is consumed by rage and frustration after seeing her companions killed when Kayn attacked the Wuju and caused a massacre, seeking to possess a second Darkin weapon. On top of that, Zolani was the main antagonist of the second Great Darkin War event, wreaking so much havoc across Runeterra that Mihira had to descend with an army of small celestial winged beings, along with Kael, to intervene in the chaos that was threatening to destroy the world. But Zolani had grown so powerful that she could finally go toe-to-toe with Aatrox himself. herself. And with Mihira's intervention, things only tipped further in her favor. Her hemomancy had reached a level where she could subjugate and absorb Mihira herself in her ascended form, transforming into Zilani Aspect's Bane. And here's a really crazy fun fact. You know that Legends of Runeterra skin line called Corrupted? It basically shows an alternate what-if ending for the Second Great Darken War. In the first ending, the conclusion is that Rise decides to save the world, using a global rune to pulverize Zilani. Yeah, he shows up and completely wrecks her. The second ending, however, shows the opposite. Zilani wins, and as a result, many ascended characters and aspects are taken over by her hemomancy, completely subjugated. And this isn't a short list. Here's who we had: Azir, Diana, Leona, Nasus, Pantheon, Renekton, Tarek, Xerath, and Zoe. Also, it's worth remembering that the idea of a Darkin corrupting an ally in-game isn't new. The first time this was considered was during Aatrox's rework, where he would have a spell giving one of his teammates the chance to become a Darkin. Basically, Aatrox would use his Dark Flight ability, leaping into the air and landing at a target location. During this movement, he would leave his sword behind. Then the ally would have to pick up Aatrox's sword and pay a blood price, burning themselves to death. To be more specific, the ally would sacrifice their entire life, kind of like Kratos in the God of War 2, when he wields the Blade of Olympus. After paying this tribute with their life, the ally would revive with bonus AP, AD, and CDR. Absolutely insane and awesome, right? Back to Zilani. Her popularity kept growing so much that she was even chosen to appear in the new canon. In the motion comic The Truth, we see her facing Zahen and trying to corrupt him with her hemomancy. Later, she's mentioned again in Zahen's updated biography. In this new type of short story, Riot replaced the full biographies with on the site. At one point, Zahen reflects on all of those he chose and saw as worthy of ascending, recognizing who they really were. He mentions several ascendants, and among them is Zilani, noting how compassionate she was and how war-weary she had become. And recently, Zilani's blades themselves became an item called Eternal Hunger. Now, going back to the post about Zahen's creation, Squad 5 didn't just say that a Darkin support is still possible and wouldn't be far off. He also mentioned that a fighter with more bursty damage and strong time-limited defenses already exists in Pantheon. The only thing missing for a support Pantheon is a way to buff allies. So if Zilani isn't chosen as the next Darkin, this spot would probably go to Dural, another Darkin from Legends of Runeterra. Dural also became super popular because of his concept. He's kind of like a paladin figure. For those who don't know, Dural is a Darkin sealed inside a shield, placed under the protection of a noble Demacian family called Forti. This family had a duty of making sure no one ever touched the shield, and that responsibility was passed down through generations. But of course, things eventually went wrong. Lady Forti had a child, apparently a young boy, who felt pity for the shield. He claimed he even heard it crying sadly, calling for him. Lady Forti warned him even more sternly, telling him that he should never touch the shield, right after revealing the secret of how the object came to be in the Forti family, and their duty to keep it exactly as it was. But you know, kids are unstoppable. At some point, the boy touched the shield, and that's when Dural took control of him. Here's a really interesting thing about Dural that also applies to other Darkin. Many of them had their minds broken, to the point that they barely remember anything from their past. Their memories are already murky and confusing, and it gets even worse when a Darkin finds a host. The memories of both the Darkin and the host start merging together.
Memories bleed together now. A kingdom I never knew, and an empire long gone.
Even personality gets absorbed and influences the Darkin as well. That's why Nefiri, after surrendering to her instincts and understanding how those Dune dogs behave, acts in a much more bestial way.
We never release our bite, even if the blood chokes us.
And that's also why Zahen himself isn't exactly thrilled about spilling Demacian blood when he encounters a Demacia champion on the enemy team in-game.
I take no joy in facing you, Demacian. I will end this swiftly.
This whole thing about memories having more influence was even confirmed in that post by rioters who created Zahen, but it had already been shown in Legends of Runeterra, where we see Varus starting to hear the voices of Kay and Valmar more, helping bring back who he really was and restoring more of his humanity. In Dural's case, you can tell from his behavior and dialogue that he really ends up being a mix of a scared child and an adult struggling with panic attacks and bursts of rage.
Do you see? Do you see? We are surrounded. Where is Acacia? You must understand. You cannot escape.
Now, based on what Squad 5 said in the Q&A session, it's clear that if Geralt ends up being a Darkin support instead of Zolani, his kit will likely have some ability that lets him do a sudden engage on the enemy. I'm thinking something like Pantheon's W or Leona's E. Another likely feature would be some kind of absurd defense that simply negates or ignores enemy attacks, like Pantheon's E. But I wonder how Riot would implement it. Would Geralt's shield expand to cover a large area? And what about the Hemomancy buff mechanic? Would it be more like a passive aura, automatically affecting allies nearby, similar to the Knight's Vow item? Or would the player have to click an ally to activate the effect when ready, like when Zillion can level up an ally? Either way, it's clear that both Zolani and Geralt are coming to the game, but most likely one of them will go to Wild Rift, while the other will be introduced in TFT. So place your bets and may the best Darkin support win. Jack the Winner sets rival. Imagine having a top lane fighter who can easily build tanky, but also deals crazy amount of damage and can literally 1v5 if well fed, and in the hands of a skilled player. Yeah, you probably thought of a few already, because that's just how top lane works. But jokes aside, Set won't be the only boss of the top lane once Jack comes to the game. So who is this character, who kinda looks like one of those Tridon dudes from One Piece when you look closely? Well, according to his card lore, Jack the Winner, or just Jack, used to be a boxing champion aboard the King's Court. Years in the boxing ring taught him some valuable lessons. Jack learned that if his opponents bleed, it's because they're scared. He also learned the power of the silent stare, and above all, the power of uncontrolled violence. Nowadays, Jack runs the entire ship where he once fought, sitting on a makeshift throne. He makes sure his business stays far away from prying eyes. Jack also has a strong bond with Tom Kinch, who frequently visits him looking for helpless clients. Those who are on good terms with Jack might find him disarmingly affectionate, but woe to anyone who earns his wrath. The moment Jack's dark eyes go cold, he unleashes the same violent tendencies that made him so deadly in the ring. Jack debuted in Legends of Runeterra in the Glory and Navori expansion on March 29th, 2023. He stormed into Set's arena to participate in a tournament that invited many fighters. And the best part, Set himself gets hyped and jumps into the fight, feeling like someone has finally awakened the beast inside him. He thrives on the chaos Jack brings, ready to go full on in a brutal brawl. Jack enters his bloodthirsty mode while Set starts powering up into that empowered blonde rage mode. And honestly, it's super fun that these characters have tons of back and forth in their interactions, showing more of this rivalry since they're both mafia bosses of their respective criminal enterprises.
Never did get your invite, champ.
Yeah, because I never heard of you.
Hope you don't mind, Set. I made myself at home.
Oh, but I do mind. Looks like someone's gotta teach you some manners.
You teach the manners, Set. I'll teach the fighting.
Gonna make me humiliate you in front of both of your friends, Jack?
What's funnier, eh? Your jokes or your punches?
But even though they have a huge rivalry to the point where they appear in each other's level up animation, ready to throw down, they ironically have a strong synergy in gameplay as well. Plus, there are more voice lines that reference this dynamic.
Well, if it's not the champion of Guy Envy.
You're lucky we're on the same side, Jack.
Not a bad bitch you've got here.
Thanks, Jack. Now, let's make this crowd sing. Guess it's time for a little tag team.
Fine by me.
If we're on the same side, who are we fighting?
Anyone, Set. Everyone.
Now, Jack is one of the 4 exclusive champions of Legends of Runeterra, along with Nora, King Poro, and Elder Dragon, and he's the only one of 4 who's never appeared in any other media outside of Legends of Runeterra. King Poro was first introduced in the Howling Abyss ARAM mode, Nora appeared as the shopkeeper and now is coming to Wild Rift, and Elder Dragon is already a monster on Summoner's Rift. On top of that, Jack got a card and an emote, but he also got something even more interesting that shows just how popular he became. He got a skin in the 4 Beasts universe, where he's Jack the Dragon of Carnage. He even has lore in this line which goes like this. In his youth, Jack wandered the lands indulging his violent tendencies however he pleased. His cruelty caught the attention of the Dragon of Carnage, who recognized a kindred spirit in Jack and offered him its blessing. Now Jack seeks to eliminate others blessed by dragons, the only being strong enough to quench his thirst for blood. This is the story that comes with this level 1 splash art I showed. The second one is this, which has a quote from Jack himself. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing hope die in someone's eyes long before their last breath. And you know who else has a skin in this line? That's right, Set. So yeah, these two are definitely going to clash at some point. Honestly, I'm hoping Set wins. Riot can't just make an insanely strong champion who's the boss, only to introduce a rival that outright beats him. That's just weak. If they fight, Set has to come out on top, Godzilla versus King Kong style, or at the very least, it should be a tie. But anyway, as for Jack's gameplay, I'd say he'd probably have abilities that apply bleed or concussive effects that break armor and slow enemies. It fits his character perfectly. When he's in a fight, he's brutally violent, with voice lines referencing breaking bones and making enemies bleed. And building on that bleed idea, I could see Jack stacking the bleed on enemies almost like Darius does with his passive. For Jack, every bleed applied would fill up his berserk meter, and when it's full, he could finally access his ultimate, entering that bloodthirsty mode that makes him huge and completely jacked. In this form, he'd gain stats like extra health, armor, magic resist, attack damage, attack speed, tenacity, regeneration, lifesteal, basically whatever Riot wants to throw in. Now about that berserk meter and the bleed stacking mechanic, it could also trigger automatically when it fills up completely, kind of like Gnar turning into Mega Gnar when his bar maxes out. Thinking about more skin lines for Jack, Soul Fighter would definitely work, and who knows, maybe he and Set could show up in that Lucha Libre universe too, since that world hasn't had new characters in a while. Right now it only has 4. I'm not sure if Wild Rift has those hidden passive Easter eggs like PC League, but it would be so cool if Jack and Set had one. Kind of like Rengar versus Kha'Zix, Jax versus Bel'Veth, Aatrox versus Kayle and Morgana, you know, where the winner is whoever kills the other first in a duel without any assists. The winner could get a special reward, like a visual champion belt icon, extra passive bonuses, or unique kit effects. Maybe Jack's bleed stacks faster, or Set's W deals true damage to the whole area instead of just the center. Imagine how sick that would be. And one thing to note, Jack is not a Vastaya. He belongs to a race of fish/sharkmen that doesn't have an official name yet. But yeah, that's basically it. I'll see you guys in the next video.